Welcome back to Rochester Living with Mark Siwiec and Corey James Moran, brought to you by Legion Homes by Mark Siwiec and Associates. This is episode 181. Our guest, Dave Andreatta, is going to be joining us. Very excited. Brought show and tell, by the way. First person to ever do that.
Oh my God, so excited.
No one brings show and tell?
First time.
No.
I know,
Can I drop in like this, by the way?
Yeah, do whatever you want.
All right.
Oh yeah,
We're very casual.
we are very, very, very informal. Yeah. So drop in whenever you want, bud.
Dave, before we get to you, Mark, I've got to get your review of the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh come on!
As the only white man in America above the age of 40 that liked what they saw.
I loved it. I mean, but then again, I've been a Kendrick Lamar fan going way back.
Yeah.
And if anybody out there is interested, I can't find a single individual interested in joining me at the Kendrick Lamar concert in Toronto this coming summer. So if you'd like to go, just give me a call.
Need a friend? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. I will admit, I'm not like a giant Kendrick Lamar fan. I don't listen to his music a ton. I know, the hits, whatever.
Yeah.
But I appreciated it.
The hits. He had one hit, but I mean, like
he's got a couple.
Yeah.
Come on, stay humble in that one.
Yeah.
DNA. I mean, come on.
Okay, there we go.
Come on. I got a few. I've got a little base knowledge.
Wow.
But I don't know. I feel like you can appreciate, even if you don't have much of a knowledge, the fact that he actually was rapping.
Mm-hmm,
the fact that he was like moving lyrics in and out, like he was replacing lyrics to meet like the Super Bowl is kind of crazy.
Pardon me. So unlike Drake, Nick Mancuso,
here we go.
unlike Drake,
Shots fired,
who like had to at the concert last February, just continually had to like catch his breath. It was embarrassing.
Well, and then that was my third point.
Well,
is
there we
he
go.
absolutely crushed Drake. The feud is over. We have to ring the bell. It's done.
Well, and do you know some of these Easter eggs? I mean, do you know why SZA's there?
Oh, give me the backstory on that. Of course, you would know all these.
Do you know that Serena Williams was on stage?
I did.
And do you know why Serena Williams was on stage?
Because Drake took a shot at her.
Because Drake used to date her.
Oh, okay.
This is just a font of pop culture knowledge, just
yeah,
pouring out right
absolutely.
here. And I, as I said before we started the show, I didn't know a single song. Not only did I not know a single song, I didn't even know that Kendrick Lamar had a feud with Drake until the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle, when the question was like blank, the song that started the feud.
Oh
and
my God.
I guess it was that.
But listen,
I filled in the blanks only going the other way.
You made it happen. It's fine. But here we are talking about it. Now you know about it.
I know all about it now, and I hear it was a mic drop.
I mean, it really was.
When the entire Super Bowl stadium is singing the A minor lyric.
Yeah.
That'd be a tough watch for Drake. It's you and Drake who didn't watch the two people that didn't watch the halftime show.
I'm in good company.
Bottom line, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. I think he's a fantastic performer. I love his music.
So you don't believe, like the rest of, I don't know, a good portion of the country, that who's ever left from Leonard Skinner should be doing the Super Bowl halftime show next year?
Oh, dear God, yeah. Nor should I don't feel any need to resurrect Michael Jackson's corpse.
Yeah.
Put him up. I mean,
hologram though.
Yeah.
How about the game itself? I mean, did you enjoy it or were you bored?
I as soon as Kendrick Lamar stepped off stage, I went to bed. I literally went to bed. I went to sleep. Yeah, it was just so obvious what was going to play out, and it's.
You didn't take any joy in Patrick Mahomes literally running for his life?
I love Kansas City, and I love. I love.
What kind of Bills fan are you?
Do you know
how
that's
this works,
sacrilege?
Mark?
That's sacrilege.
I know. I'm going to start getting hate mail. I really like Patrick Mahomes. Love Travis Kelce. Chris Jones is amazing. I think Spags is incredible. Andy Reid, like the whole lineup. But that being said, it's not bad to have somebody other than. I mean, they did need to be knocked down a little bit in terms of
a little bit.
Yeah. So and P.S. They were. It was.
That was
crushing.
I've never seen one that bad before. I'm trying to think, like in recent history, 49ers in Cincinnati, maybe like
there was
early 90s.
Yeah,
was like 51.
there have been a few blowouts, but that was among the worst.
Yeah, that was
among the worst. And it just seemed like they could do nothing right.
Literally. I mean, they're dropping everything.
It's like, how did Buffalo not beat them?
Yeah. I mean, the sacks, the pick six. I mean, like just insane. Anyway.
Yeah.
But we should probably move on.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, we've got so much.
We do.
Dave is so into. Well, you get us through the next few, and then I'm going to say why it is that I'm so excited to have Dave.
This is the part Mark hates, the real estate portion of the podcast. Let's get a market update.
You're on fire today, dude.
I mean, Mark, where's the confetti cannon? Can you grab it?
Yeah. He'll edit it in in post.
We have 12 more listings in Monroe County than last week. 332. Oh, my math was wrong. Sorry. Less. Actually, 8. We have 8.
It's still twice as many points as Kansas City put on the board.
There you go.
Oh,
That's right. 8 more listings. 332 this week, 324 last week. It's going up.
Yeah. Just by small amounts.
It's a little shocking to me considering the fact that every seller right now, for the most part anyway, is crushing it. You would think that would inspire more sellers to want to come to the table and throw the property on. But
I'm speculating that it's been unseasonably cold.
Yeah.
And
I have skated to every showing that I've been the past 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
literally,
exactly. Yeah.
just this thick is the ice in front of somebody's houses. It's a dangerous situation.
I do think it's going to pick up, but I am a bit worried. Normally, this is the time of year when I'm meeting one after another with prospective sellers, and the phone is not ringing. And now that being said, we've got, I think, 5 new listings going on the market for sale this week.
Yep.
So we continue to do our best. We continue to hold our own, but I don't know. We'll see.
Rest of the numbers here. So for the 6-county region, we have one less listing than last week. 586 right now, down from 587. Under contract and pending, we're at 633. That is actually down one from last week at 634. And then 6-county region, we're even at 985. Let's chat about mortgage interest rates because they're actually starting to trickle down a little bit.
Yeah.
We had the jobs report come out, Friday, right?
Right.
And it was gigantic.
I mean,
256,000 jobs based on the 155,000 expected.
I thought we had 143,000 new jobs
Was that
created.
it?
143,000 new jobs created. Yeah.
Maybe I have the wrong numbers.
But there were revisions as a result of having gone back. I mean, this was a very, very volatile report in that they were trying to take into consideration some things that they haven't done in a while, like what is the actual population of the United States, and they had to take into account.
That seems like a very basic kind of question. Although, with what's going on right now, things are in flux.
And that's exactly, it was immigration that was, so the unemployment rate actually ticked downward as a result of some of the, so anyway, it was a very, very complicated report. But
can you kind of just really dumb it down, though? The revision aspect of probably the next 6 reports, right?
I'm not sure.
You had sent an article, I think it was last week, that talked about how we're going to see a lot of these revisions, maybe more so than normal, to get to a point where maybe they're more accurate.
I think the big revision took place just now, but it really does have a lot to do. And again, just dumbing it down, just top line, what is the population in the United States? And it was already complicated because we were not taking into consideration the number of immigrants who were living in the United States illegally, who actually had jobs.
Sure.
But that becomes even more complicated moving forward as a result of immigrants being deported, illegal immigrants being deported. But also, what's really insane is that 4% of the federal workforce has stated they want to go ahead and they want to take early retirement. But then there was an injunction imposed by a federal judge stating, I don't think that you can actually let these people go and continue to pay them until September. So there is, I mean, listen, it's a Trump presidency. There is going to be volatility, whether it's tariffs against Canada, Dave, we'll talk about that later, or in Mexico, China, that was all last week. This week, it's always going to be something, so.
Well, rate-wise, we are down to what, 7.01, down from 7.05.
Yep.
Again, I think we're probably going to hang in this spot for a little bit, and we'll see how things play out.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on? CPI comes out next week, right? That's the next?
This week.
Okay, this week. That's Wednesday. That's right.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to watch, and that could maybe move the needle one way or the other. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. And again, whatever it is that is going to be released on Wednesday, that's interesting to a point, but I think what's really interesting is what happens 3-4 months down the road, 5 months down the road, if Trump is successful in implementing so many of these policy positions that are viewed as inflationary. So it's just, they're extraordinary times.
Maybe that's why the phone's not ringing.
That is definitely
part of it. Yeah,
I do think. And we'll get into it. It's a lengthier conversation, but I do think that there is a lot to be said for people not buying or selling homes in advance of a presidential election because they don't like to make big financial moves during times of uncertainty.
Right.
Yeah, Dave.
Arguably, though, this is a time of great uncertainty.
That's
it's
exactly
more
my
so
point.
the last
Than it
2
was,
months,
yeah.
right?
That is exactly my point.
People really don't have a feel of where this is going, and that could be freezing up the market too.
That was exactly my point, and a lot of. I mean, I met with my accountant last week, and he is stating that he's had conversations with several individuals, all of whom are putting off the purchase of a car, a home purchase, et cetera, as a result of this. Some of them are even as a result of either thinking, okay, if things get bad and I've got to leave the country for a while, or B, if things get bad and there's a financial crisis, I want to have cash on hand to get my to make sure that my business remains viable, but then concomitantly have the cash on hand to swoop in and take advantage of opportunities that arise as a result of people losing their properties or having to give up their businesses, et cetera. So again, this is, and I want to be really, really careful. We try not to be political. We're trying only to make statements that are grounded in not necessarily our reality, but what it is that we're seeing, reading, and hearing from whether it's accountants or from venerable newspapers and media outlets. Whether it's the Wall Street Journal or it's the New York Times. Left and right. So yeah. All
right, should we bring in our guest?
Let's do it.
No, it's very uplifting. No.
Yeah, Dave, you were going to say,
really
something. I think.
No.
Should we introduce you first, or do you want to jump in?
No, I'm just so happy to be here. You know what some of your listeners won't know about me, but you guys know. I'm sort of a real estate agent groupie.
Oh, I do know this about you. Yes.
and I really dig the work that you do. I find the entire industry really fascinating. And I've been friends with you, Mark, for a long time. I've gotten to know Corey over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I get invited from time to time to some of the parties and some of
from time to time. You're invited to most of them, bud.
You can probably just walk up to Mark's house today. Knock on the door.
The events that you have, and I always just find them informational, educational, and I have a good time. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so thank you for being here. Why don't you go through and then I'll just dive in on top of, who is Dave Andreatta?
Yeah, so I mean...
Enigma.
Seasoned journalist, hockey player,
Polymath. Let's just throw it out there. Yeah.
And Canadian as well.
Yes, and
that's
Canadian.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So you've had stops at the DNC. You were there for over 10 years, right?
Yeah, almost 12 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
City newspaper, WXXI. Mm-hmm.
City newspaper, not as as a journalist, but also as editor.
Right.
Yeah.
So when WXXI acquired City newspaper, that's when I became editor in September of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, and I left there in very late 2023, like December 2023.
Well, let's start at the beginning, though. What drew you to this? What drew you to the journalism? Is it something you always wanted to pursue, or is it just something that you kind of fell into?
No, it was something I wanted to pursue. I was drawn to it by the idea of learning a little bit about a lot of different things.
Okay.
I love kind of being able to get a glimpse behind the curtain of other people's lives, and I love storytelling. I believe passionately in the what I think is the central function of journalism, which is being a government watchdog. Keeping the powers that be accountable, acting as, there's a reason they call it the fourth estate.
The fourth estate, yeah.
And so I believe passionately in that. And I did that for 25 years before just recently getting out of it. I'm now in media relations at the University of Rochester, and I'm putting reporters in touch with our faculty members who are doing research, fielding calls from reporters, pitching reporters, knowing how to frame a story has been really helpful on that front. But I still managed to scratch that itch because I'm still writing.
You're still you.
I'm still doing some reporting. Yeah.
Some reporting. I believe. Mark, can you elaborate? He's
There's a
being humble
small-
right now. Get him.
There's a small paper out of New York City. I think it's called the New York Times.
Yeah,
Is
that
is
one. Yeah, that one.
That one. So you occasionally
Dabble.
so
He
funny
dabbles.
because-
I love I read the newspaper. I love just reading newspapers. Sunday morning, I read the New York Times down at their place in Hammondsport, and it's not uncommon for me to like be reading and it was like, oh, what an interesting story about the Susan B. Anthony house, or what an interesting story about. And then I looked down, I was like, that's written by Dave Andreatta. And then I got to call him. I'm like, oh my God, I completely fanboy on you.
I love it. Yeah, so I've been freelancing for them for about 4 years now. Wow. So freelancing and what they call stringer. Are you familiar with that, Corey?
No, explain,
have been in the media. It's basically just sort of a on-call reporter in a certain part of the country. I'm not the only one. They have hundreds of them around the world. But I will tend to get calls when news breaks in Western New York. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, I spent a Saturday in Buffalo when there was a Canadian freighter trapped in the ice of Lake Erie for 3 days.
I didn't even hear about this. Really?
Yeah, it was.
Well,
it actually
if you
made
read
good
the New
news.
York Times on Sunday mornings, I was
You know what's so funny about it? It's just amazing how different mediums report these stories. You know, I went, first of all, I didn't know what the story was going to be other than there's a ship caught in the ice. You know, you have to sort of go and report that out. And it became very clear to me that, and by the way, there's 17 crew members on board. But it became very clear to me that what I thought was a decent story was really just the onlookers from the sidelines, because it became such a spectacle. I mean, there's this giant ship about a mile off the shore just stuck and encased in ice. And so it drew a lot of spectators and onlookers and amateur photographers. And so that kind of became the story until 3:30 in the afternoon. I literally filed the story, and the thing starts moving.
Of course, obviously, yeah.
So the icebreakers were in all day trying to chop up the ice and churn the waters around this thing to get it going. And, you know, I'm thinking they've been at this for 3 days and it's still, 14 degrees outside. Like,
You're
I don't
safe
know
to file. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm safe to file. God damn! It's like it never fails. It never fails. I call my editor. There's been a development, but anyway.
Slight development.
So I filed a story. I still get home for like the 6:30 news or something, and I don't tune into the NBC or ABC sort of nightly news regularly. I tend to get my news mostly online, from newspapers or legacy media.
Conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, maybe.
Alex Jones.
Yeah,
Right.
Obviously.
But it was so funny hearing the NBC Nightly News' take on this. Tonight on Lake Erie.
Oh, of course.
17 crew members aboard, saved. I'm like, they were playing checkers.
Frozen in fear.
Like the Coast Guard repeatedly said, they're like, these people are
No one's
not
in
in
danger
danger. They probably
They're a
got
mile
3
off the
days of
coast.
overtime
Right,
pay.
yeah.
Like,
Yes,
it was
yeah,
great.
They're just super bored at this point.
So
Exactly.
So there was a story that you were working on yesterday for the Times. You want to talk a
Oh
little
my
bit about
God!
that?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that. Have either of you ever heard of a meat raffle?
Yes.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to one in March. They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you want to come?
I would. I actually have.
We have two tables.
They're a
Mark,
great
you wanna
time. Where?
Yes.
What is it
Yeah.
for? Can I ask you what it's for?
My wife is the vice president of communications for Mercy,
Okay.
the all-girl Catholic school.
Yeah. So it's
To benefit.
it's a benefit for the school, not for any particular part of the school, like athletics or
I
a
think
school
general-
trip or
I'm
something
pretty sure
like
it's
that.
general fund. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I had never heard of one until about a month ago when my wife told me, make sure you book off. I think it was February 1st or 2nd, whatever, a few days ago. She says, book off this day. I bought tickets to the meat raffle. And I didn't hear what she. I'm like,
weird
the
at
what?
first. It does
The
sound weird
what
at first.
raffle?
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah.
the meat raffle. I'm like, the
Tom
meat raffle?
Brady's going to be in town?
Right. And I'm thinking, so my first thing is like, I thought this was some sort of like speed dating exercise, like a meet cute, And then
Is
I'm
there
like,
dancing involved?
Yeah, right.
Are they
right.
wearing clothes?
And then when I finally becomes clear to me that she's referring to MEAT, meat, I'm like, just a torrent of questions. Like, why is this a thing?
Yeah.
Where is this meat coming from? Who's eating this meat? What does this meat look like? Should I be getting my meat at the VFW? I don't know. which is where it was held. But anyway, we had a great time, and prior to that, it prompted me to make some calls and learn a little bit more about meat raffles and just how long they've been around. What are
It's
these
been a while.
things? It has been a while.
We had a guy that had a gigantic wheel that he brought. Like, it's his thing to go around and do. Like, that's his shtick.
That's right. Yeah,
A meat.
Oh, it's called.
Raffle
So you know
wheel.
what? So you know what like kind of cut it's going to be.
Oh, okay.
Like gigantic. Like
Right.
think like Plinko on Price is Right, but like bigger. Or like the wheel they spun at the.
I'm hopping on my phone here to
confirm the name.
show Mark
we need to visualize.
the wheel of meat.
Yeah.
The wheel of
thing.
meat.
It's a thing.
I'm shocked that I haven't yet. Yeah.
So anyway, the angle that we're sort of taking on it, I think, will be that they've really grown as a fundraiser for youth sports at a time when participating in youth sports has become increasingly expensive. You know, I mean, half of all families are claiming to be struggling to pay for the costs.
Okay, so as fascinating as meat raffles are, there is so much that we want to talk to you about. Seriously,
Are you pushing us along, Mark?
Yes, because I too have I too can do this, Corey. I also know how to segue.
Jeez,
Mom.
Mark just bullying our guests.
Let's go.
Again.
Let's go.
But I don't know where you want to take this, but there's so much. Whether it's some of the letters that he brought along, I'm desperate and anxious to hear a little bit about his take on journalism and how journalism is changing. Where do you want to take us, bud?
Let's bring it back. I mean, it's Rochester Living. It's the name of the podcast.
Okay, there we go.
Let's bring it back to Rochester first, because again, as we've stated, born in Canada. So you could have seen Rochester.
Actually,
really hard.
grew up in Canada.
Grew up in Canada.
Not far from Buffalo.
Gotcha.
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I was born in the U.S.
Okay.
Just a strange quirk. So yeah.
All right. Fair. What drew you to Rochester? I guess ultimately.
Ultimately, my wife and I were working in New York City at the time. This was in the mid to late 2000s. We just had our first child. Both my wife and I are from Southern Ontario, Canada, but we kind of knew at that point we were going to make our careers in the U.S., or at least we thought at that point.
Okay.
My wife's a field hockey coach, and believe it or not, people ask, "That's a real job?" Yeah, it's a real job, but not everywhere, including Canada.
Okay, well, fair.
Fair, American colleges tend to be more favorable toward athletics and that sort of thing. So she was an assistant coach at Columbia at the time, Columbia University. I was working at the New York Post, and she got a call out of the blue to interview for a job at the University of Rochester. We came up here. We had just had our son. We knew that we didn't want to raise our kid in the city. I mean, we probably could have stuck around a few years longer.
Sure, yeah.
You know, he's an infant. He doesn't know any better. But when we saw this opportunity, we saw how close, with the sort of arm's distance from our parents, it just made sense. And we recognized it immediately as a welcoming community, a community with a high standard of quality of life, and at that time anyway, relatively low housing costs. Like, it was amazing, this idea.
Comparatively still is.
Comparatively still is, sure. But I mean, it was amazing at the time that, I'm thinking, I can get this for how much?
Sure, yeah.
And we fell in love with it. So I landed at the Democrat and Chronicle after that and started on what was then a brand new investigative team with Gary Craig and Steve Orr.
Yeah.
It was just a trio of us.
Gary's just awesome. We should actually have him on at some point in time. Just a great reporter.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful guy.
Who's actually covering right now? I think Gary's the one who's covering the Oak Hill story. Is that right?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So anyway,
so give us your 30,000 foot view of Rochester, because you've seen it, over the past couple decades now.
Yeah. Well, look, I had an opportunity, in fact, an opportunity that I took in 2013 to accept a job at the Globe and Mail newspaper in Toronto, which is, the Wall Street Journal of Canada, if you will. It's best known for its report on business, but it's a national news outlet, highly respected. And I took it in 2013 and actually relocated to Toronto. The plan was to finish out the school year for the kids and sell the house. And about 6 months in, my wife and I decided that this wasn't going to work.
We're coming back.
that I needed to come back. The community has allowed me to all kinds of to indulge in all kinds of different interests and opportunities. I love theater. I've been involved in local theater. Was heavily involved in my kids' extracurricular activities growing up. I'm 5 minutes from the ballpark. I'm 5 minutes from the hockey rink or the soccer field. These were things that would have been quite literally impossible for me to enjoy. Sure. If I were working in Toronto, because first of all, I wouldn't be able to afford to live in Toronto. We would have had to live on the outskirts, and it was just going to be, it just wasn't going to work. So the Democrat and Chronicle, I left on very good terms. They took me back. It was kind of like a 9-month hiatus. So when you ask, like, what do I think about Rochester? What's my 30,000-foot view? I just think of it as a highly livable and welcoming community all around. Like and I think that it gets a bad rap from a lot of people who are what I'll call, locals. I consider myself now a local, but I think it gets a bad rap from folks who've been here a long time and remember the sort of glory days when Kodak was the Google.
Sure. Xerox is doing their thing. Yep.
Sure. The Kodak, Xerox were the Googles of our time, and employed 60,000 people or something like that. Like, I get it. That must have been a really, really special time. But I still think that Rochester has a lot to offer, and I've found it. And I would encourage some of those folks to not get hung up on nostalgia. Rochester loves its nostalgia, and I think it has an unhealthy relationship with nostalgia.
Certainly,
to be honest.
I dread the arrival of December 1st because inevitably we're bombarded with stories about the monorail, the Christmas monorail at Midtown Plaza. I mean, dear God, how many times do we have to revive that old chestnut? I mean,
where is it
God's
now?
sake.
I heard it's in the locker somewhere.
It is in storage somewhere, and then they're renovating that, like, it's a small world after all.
Oh,
clock.
the Clock of Nations. Clock of Nations.
Clock of
in
Nations.
the
They're
Siwiec
renovating.
building.
They're like, why?
So a former colleague of mine at the Democrat and Chronicle, Al Morell, used to write a column called "Whatever Happened to." Right? Whatever happened to ... and pick your poison. Something that has gone away.
Sure.
It was
the Fast Ferry.
Sure, but it was
Currently sunk in Venezuela.
But it was literally one of the best read columns whenever they ran that the paper had. They still recycle those.
Really?
And this is from, we're going back 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would like to see us more forward looking.
Because I do think it's an incredibly exciting time for Rochester. I mean, what is happened really over the last decade, I would say, has been really exciting stuff. I mean, specifically when we were up, I always tell this to people that come into town for tours that are thinking about taking jobs here. I always cite when Amazon was looking for their HQ2. And the Finger Lakes region and Rochester obviously is part of that. Well, it got some really bright lights shown on us. And we didn't end up getting it, but I think it uncovered for a lot of people what there is to offer here. And since then, I've seen, some great things happen.
Yeah.
I love your collective optimism because I am part of, I remember Rochester when there was a Kodak Xerox Pouch Lam, when there were when downtown was alive and thriving, and there were department stores, and there were art galleries, and there were restaurants, and there was just so much to do. And increasingly, and I love it, I'll never leave here, and I love the people here in particular. I mean, this community has provided so much to me, so much opportunity, but it's just so disheartening not to be able to go downtown for so many obvious reasons. And, Chief, among them is just there's very, very little to do down there. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So on that note, I think you're exactly right that there's very little to do. Where I get my backup, I bristle at, I live in Fairport.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And most of my social set are the parents of my kids' friends. This is sort of what ends up happening. And wonderful people. But there is, I think, in the suburbs, and I'll speak mostly for the east side here, this sort of collective reluctance or fear that something bad is going to happen downtown, that it's sort of like, a Beirut or something.
Sure.
And I don't think it's quite that bad. Now, don't get me wrong. I can take you to streets I can take you to Remington Street where there are people living with literally no roof over their head.
Yep.
The houses look bombed out. I get it, but it's not all like that. Well, I do think it's a lack of things to do for sure.
Absolutely. But, I've had to, and where I was headed with this is you mentioned Fairport. I've had to recalibrate because downtown is no longer the center of that which one, of the place that one goes to enjoy a good meal or to go shopping. You want a good meal? You want to go out and have a cocktail at a really great restaurant? Go to the Village of Fairport.
Right.
It's all gravitated. It's all migrated to the suburbs.
So I still, I freelance for other publications too, and I just wrote a small piece in the City Magazine's, my former stomping ground at WXXI, City Magazine's Best of Rochester issue, and it was sort of a critic's pick about, in my case, I was like, the place to be, and it's the Cannery in Fairport.
Oh yeah,
it's the Cannery.
It's the new Park Ave.
It really is. Yeah. Park Ave, East End. I mean, it's all of it.
Yeah. I've just had to recalibrate my thinking and I need to start spending more and more time in your neck of the woods because there are some great restaurants there right now. My God.
And we like to highlight them every single week on the podcast.
Yes,
hear about them.
Yeah,
Body
exactly.
and Clad was the one that we just mentioned.
Yes.
Have you gone yet?
No, I haven't gone.
Okay.
I haven't gone. I've heard good things.
We'll get the review once you do.
Now, but actually, has that officially opened? There was a soft
the soft
launch,
open.
right?
Soft this past Saturday.
Right.
But I've got reservations there, I think next week or
There
two.
we go.
Yeah, so I'll let you know.
Okay. So you've got some show and tell. Let's get to some show and tell.
Oh, yeah, you
Good.
want show and
This is
tell?
what Mark's been waiting for the past 25 minutes.
Oh, okay, so while you're pulling all this, one of the reasons that I love Dave so much, one of the reasons he's such a good friend, you go ahead and you start pulling all that stuff up. He is one of the most interesting human beings that I know.
A true onion.
And he is a polymath, and he's an ideal volcano. I mean, the guy is just an endless font of interesting thoughts, stories, ideas, and I'm just always so grateful. And
Did you hear that, honey? A font of interesting ideas.
We're going
So
to
I want you to
isolate
keep that
this,
in
and we're
mind.
going to send it to you so you can just play it for us. Just this part.
So he's brought. I'm just going to tee it up, and you can. Dave has brought with him a stack. There we go. We're gonna.
He walked in the room. He's like, "I brought a few things."
Well, we're not going to go. We're not going to
Well,
go
of
through
course,
this.
yeah.
But what I wanted to showcase here is, you asked a little bit about like what my view of Rochester. I talked about it as a welcoming community. These are letters that I received. And by the way, if I held on to every single letter I'd ever received, I mean, I'd need a filing cabinet, really and truly. These are just some of the more special ones. For whatever reason, and I can't remember them all right now, but for whatever reason, they touched me in a way or made me think and, made me put them away and, wrap them up and save them. But I still turn to these from time to time and remember, take a look at them, and it really helps me appreciate the role that I played and the role that I hope I still play in maybe a different way in this community. It's really something special when you're getting letters from people who are pouring their hearts out to you, asking you to tell their story, or trusting you to tell that story, or even if they're writing to criticize, and I've got plenty of that too. But if they do it in a polite and well-meaning, constructive way, I get a lot out of that. I found myself. I would typically like to call those people if they ever left a phone number, or I'd write them back and strike up sort of a pen pal relationship with them, just to let them know that, like, I'm not the quote unquote the media with sort of horns on my head or some sort of agenda. I'm really just in the community, just like all of us, trying to report on everyday happenings and goings on and add some context to them.
All right. So are Corey and I going to pick and choose some of these, or do you have one or two that you might want to know?
I don't know what you'd be able to find in here, but this is one I know that you're going to be interested in.
Okay, great. Tee it up for us. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So this is a letter I received from we'll be dating ourselves with this, but hopefully most of your audience will get it. This is a letter from the 44 caliber killer, son of Sam, David Berkowitz.
Yeah.
So who terrorized New York City in the summer of 1977.
Real quick, just the feeling. Go back there, like close your eyes, go back to that moment. What was the feeling you had when you picked up that letter and looked at it and went, holy shit?
I was shocked. So working in a newsroom is sort of like Christmas every day, because you'd get these kinds of, crazy letters. And I shouldn't say this is a crazy letter. It's actually quite lucid and cogent and everything. But
Which is actually probably scarier.
Yeah, really.
Oh, I've got an anecdote about that too. But there's always something in your mailbox. I mean, actually physical mailbox, which I think is probably going away now more in this day and age. But it was such a treat for so many years to just come into work and find letters that people would send you and wanting to you to tell their story.
All right, so how is it that why is it that David Berkowitz is writing to you?
Okay, so there was a back when newspaper columnists were quote unquote famous, there was a newspaper columnist by the name of Jimmy Breslin, and
Very
he wrote
famous.
he wrote for the Daily News and I think later Newsday, and he cut his teeth actually being dispatched as a young reporter to cover the Kennedy funeral, John F. Kennedy funeral, and while the entire press corps is covering the pomp and circumstance of it and hanging out on the White House, he broke off from the wolf pack and found the guy who dug Kennedy's grave.
That is interesting.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a great story?
That's
And,
insane.
ends up having an interview with him in his kitchen and tells the story of this gravedigger, John F. Kennedy's gravedigger. And it became a sort of a signature of his to break away from the pack. And he inspired generations of journalists. I mean, if you look back at some of the writings of local columnists who still moves the needle nowadays on the radio, but Bob Lonsberry in the Democrat and Chronicle in the 1980s and the early 1990s, he wrote in that sort of style. I tried to emulate that style.
You were a descendant
as much as I could. Speaking of going off the beaten track, when Jimmy Breslin died, this journalist who was an inspiration to so many journalists subsequent to him, when he died in I guess it was 2017, I expected to read more about his intrinsic intertwinement with David Berkowitz, because David Berkowitz, while he was terrorizing the city, New York City in 1977, he was writing Jimmy Breslin and taunting the city of New York through Jimmy Breslin, who was very judicious. Like, he had a stack of letters. Only very few passages ever made his column. Most of them he actually turned over to the cops to help their investigation. And there were passing mentions of David Berkowitz in almost everything you were reading about Jimmy Breslin, but I was really fascinated by this relationship, if you want to call it that. So I, inspired the Jimmy Breslin muse inspired me, and I'm like, go off the beaten path. What would you do? So I wrote to David Berkowitz at Shawangunk Correctional Facility in Wallkill, New York, and said, I don't know if you heard the news, but Jimmy Breslin has died, and I'd like to know what it was that prompted you all these years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, to write him. And so he wrote back. I got the message about a month later. I actually kept the original letter that I wrote to him. So this is kind of fun. Now, we don't have to read the whole thing, of course, but this is my handwritten letter. I sent the obits to him.
Wow.
And he wrote back and writes, I'm in receipt of your letter, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Concerning Mr. Breslin, I wish to extend my condolences to his family at their loss. But he goes on to say, I have no idea what I was thinking at the time.
Seriously?
I have no idea what I was thinking at the time. I don't know why I contacted him. I'm a reformed man. He talks about gun violence in Rochester.
Seriously?
He now calls himself the Son of Hope. Wow. And he has a brochure.
Okay.
For this is his testimony, if you will.
Wow.
He's found God. So what was interesting about this too is that I didn't see an opportunity in it, and neither did my editors at the Democrat and Chronicle, to write about it. I cover Rochester. Yeah. This was not a Rochester thing. So I just put it on my Facebook
Aside from
page.
the fact that he mentioned Rochester's gun violence.
Well, fair enough. I suppose I could stretch it. But it just didn't feel to me like a Rochester story per se.
So given your current relationship with the New York Times, do you think that if you were to have received this letter from David Berkowitz in the past few months, the Times would have asked you to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have to be timely. If Jimmy Breslin died in the last month or so,
or the anniversary of
exactly.
We're pitching the story for you.
The anniversary there is coming. I'll wait till 2027. 10-year anniversary.
Seriously.
I didn't see a way in, so I just posted it on my Facebook page, told a little story just personally, and of course the New York City papers, just jumped on it. They're like, "Why aren't you writing about this?" So I ended up getting interviewed by the New York Post and the New York Daily News about writing to David Berkowitz, and they did a story on it.
So do we have enough time? I love the story.
Yeah.
Can we segue to another one of my favorite stories? You were harangued. I think that's a pretty decent word.
Oh, yeah. I think I know what you're going to say.
Is that a New York Times crossword puzzle word?
Harangued by somebody locally about what he perceived to be your liberal, left-leaning sensibilities. And writes to you one day when it is that Donald Trump was elected in 2016.
That's right. Yeah. So this is just a small sampling of the letters. Now, I don't know. This person didn't seem to know the function of an envelope.
They're on the envelope. Okay.
Yeah. He's writing on the envelope. The writing should be, on a piece of paper.
Listen, this is very efficient, right?
Right. But this, yeah, right. Yeah.
But
he's not killing trees.
I wonder if that says something about his psychological being.
You think?
Yeah. I mean,
I agree.
What exactly?
I agree. But so anyway, he writes me one day, and by the way, he was writing to a lot of people at the DNC, but I seem to be a particularly favorite target of his. But this was November 14th, 2016 is the postmark, post stamp. And of course, Trump wins,
Well, thank God he told you. You didn't know.
Right. He seems to be emboldened here and, wah, 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 the popular vote, wah, wah. I wrote a column about the popular vote, and it just goes on and on in the back. But it was like, because it's in a different color ink, it's like he thought, all right, I'm just going to add this one last thing before I send this.
There's one more.
And he says, I'm in Quimby's every Friday night. JB Quimby's is this pub down in Andreatta that is no longer around, actually. I think they closed down. But I saw it as a personal as a personal invitation to go meet this guy.
Why else would he write it?
He never signs his name. I don't know who he is. So I have to go. I decide to meet the proprietor of JB Quimby's. I remember his name was Joe, and I said, "Look, I want to do a kind of a video column here, but I know it's a divisive time and sort of we're polarized, but that's not why I'm here. I really just want to talk to this guy." He was like, "What is wrong with this guy?" But he goes on to say, I actually think I know who this is.
No way.
We have a regular here who's here every Friday night.
Okay.
I show up this one Friday night. This guy is not there. The owner says, believe it or not, I don't know why, but he's not here. We still got to call him out of it because I talked to all the other people in Quimby's, and they had a great take on these kind of crazy letters. But I did go back, and he was there. The owner said, that's him. I went back a month or two later, and everyone in this bar, both the previous time and that time, were welcoming of me. They enjoyed the story behind these letters. We talked about a lot of different things.
And you're a good guy, and you've got good intent, and you're not there to pick a fight.
Right.
And so that's just who you are, intrinsically.
There was only one guy, one patron, who was throwing off serious get lost vibes.
Can't imagine.
And it was that guy.
Wow.
And of course, he just didn't want to talk to me. He's like, no, I'm not interested. He got up and left. And he was an older guy. I would say he was
by himself?
Maybe in his 60s or early 70s. What? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
By himself?
By himself.
I don't believe
Crazy.
It. No.
But, I actually, so the owner gave me his full name. So and I can't print that. I don't know that it was him. This is it's responsible media. We don't go into this. But I did have to look him up in the county's database just to find where does this guy live? I need to see this guy's house. And I go to his house.
Your curiosity, man.
I go to his house, and it was on either. He had American flag hanging on the porch. This side is his neighbor here is a rainbow flag. This side here is a Black Lives Matter flag or something like that.
Really?
And I'm like, this guy is thinking the world is caving in on him, right? The world is coming to an end. So I kind of felt sorry for him in a way that he's so lonely. I mean,
and angry.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Writing letters like this almost every day.
That in and of itself would have been a great story because he really served as a metaphor for the typical MAGA supporter, feeling as though the world is against them, the walls are closing in.
Yeah,
that would have been a fascinating.
I would have loved to have talked to him.
Well, and also to kind of piggyback off that, Mark, we need more of that just in the country in general, more of an understanding and actually being able to have a conversation and share our thoughts and beliefs on something and have someone do the same and not want to strangle each other when we're doing it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's becoming
civility. Is that the word I'm looking for?
One of the more impactful television commercials on the Super Bowl last night was the "He Gets Us," which is, I think about Jesus Gets Us or God. I think it's Jesus Gets Us. And really just all of these really, really sort of remarkable, and they're very good at it. All these really poignant moments, one after another, all these vignettes, where somebody wearing I love Jesus, in a Bible verse, hugging somebody who's wearing a rainbow flag, that kind of stuff. And only at the very end do they reveal who it is that they are. But there is a need for that kind of discourse in this country.
Well, and Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady got in on the act with their commercials last night.
Oh yeah, which I didn't think was particularly. I didn't think it was a great commercial.
It was an attempt. It's an attempt to bridge the divide that you're talking about.
There were several of those last night, one after another. And
the end of that one, doesn't Snoop Dogg say it's sad we have to have this conversation?
Yes, exactly.
Which I think
yeah.
I can agree with that. Do we want to turn to the state of journalism?
Sure.
Your thoughts on it now? I mean, it's so interesting, right?
I mean, where to begin? I don't know.
Yeah,
do you want to tee it up somehow?
You talk about how divisive things are now, and I kind of think back to the olden days of when media was Cronkite, right? Sure. And he's delivering the facts, and it's kind of down the middle. Yeah. And then you bring in the 24-hour news networks, right? And then that starts to divide a little bit because if you have one way of thinking, you're going to gravitate towards this one, the other one this way. And it just seems like ever since that happened, it's only ramped up. And then you throw the internet in and Twitter, and it's just the echo chambers have been created. And it seems difficult to undo.
Yeah. There's so many roads we could go down here, but when we talk about Cronkite, giving us just the facts, ma'am. He was working in an age when there was a half-hour nightly news broadcast,
was it
mandated by federal law, I believe.
That I don't know. I mean, there it is something called the fairness doctrine.
It's separate apart from the fairness doctrine, yeah. But it was mandated by in order. I'll do some research, but in order for these three ABC, NBC, CBS to get federal subsidies, they needed to not only provide entertainment, but they also were mandated to provide something of educational,
some sort of public service.
So like how radio stations are.
Yeah.
Now it's Sunday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. They have to run public affairs segments.
Right. But I would argue though that with the innovation of CNN, the 24-hour news station, there wasn't enough news to go around that would appeal to a national audience around the clock. Do you know what I mean? So you have to break it up in ways where you now present a story of national interest and then find ways to fill the air. You know all about filling air, right, Corey?
Sure do.
So I mean, that's that. And I would argue that the dismantling of the fairness doctrine under Reagan. Are you familiar with the fairness doctrine? We don't want to go on down. Do we want to go into the weeds on this?
Where's the whiteboard?
Right.
Get the whiteboard.
Yeah. Well, anyway, The fairness doctrine essentially mandated that on public airwaves, if you were going to give time to one political candidate, you had to give time to the other political candidate. Didn't have to be perfectly equal, but you get it. You have to present both sides. And when that was ditched, even though it wouldn't have applied to the cable networks like a CNN or a Fox News, what it did allow is for the Rush Limbaughs to come onto the scene on the public airwaves and alert the media titans who own the Fox Newses and the CNNs that there's an appetite for divisiveness. Mm-hmm. And they've all gone that way. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News.
Rage is now a commodity.
That's right. It's an offshoot of the if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
Yeah, but just taken to its extremes, obviously. I mean, rage is a commodity, and sadly and unfortunately, whether it's Fox News versus CNN, or whether it's Twitter versus Blue Sky, or everybody is just pumping up the anger and the hostility and the rage and the hatred of anybody whose opinion just doesn't conform to theirs.
Yeah, and that's on a national level. My biggest concern for journalism, frankly, is on the local level.
The lack thereof.
It's just been gutted, and I know it's easy to. And I'm not just trying to defend my former employer, the Democrat and Chronicle, which I still have a lot of affection for and have some great friends there, and think highly of the work that they do. But I don't think even they would tell you that they're doing enough of that work. I mean, resources have been cut back to the point that they just can't cover the community that the way they used to. But you're seeing this in Syracuse, you're seeing it in Buffalo, you're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the fault of the people who are working at these places.
It isn't their fault at all.
It is.
It's Gannett. It's these large, and to take that nationally, and I do want to come back to the local, but it's also concerning in this last election that we've all. Well, I'll speak for myself. I've really turned to the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, some of these major outlets to get a good understanding of what's going on out in the world.
Right.
But when you start to see them caving to political pressure, as so many of these national outlets, Washington Post, exactly, or LA Times, or they're not making endorsements, or they're actually CNN just had to pay $25 million to Donald Trump. When you're seeing that these news organizations are appeasing the current president for fear of retribution, that concerns me also. So yes, they've got the financial backing, the resources to report nationally, but does their reporting become diluted? Does it become slanted? Does it become biased in some way as a result of their fear?
Well, and the argument that there is an argument to be made that all reporting is biased to some extent. I mean, there's of course a journalistic standard that sound journalism tries to be objective, but we all have sort of an unconscious bias that guides
an unconscious or a very conscious bias,
unconscious or conscious. But I would argue that a reporter for the New York Times, say, or the Wall Street Journal is going at a story, is reporting a story honestly and trying to get at the facts for what they would call the best obtainable version of the truth. But who they choose to talk to, how they choose to frame the story may reveal an unconscious bias.
Right, sure. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's bring it back to the local level. Because again, I mean, you are a testament because you have these letters, you connected with the community. These people felt so compelled based on these stories that you were telling here in our area to think of that now. It's kind of insane when you think about it now to take out a letter, handwrite something, put it in the mail.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of work that goes into that. But that was the feeling and the emotion that was brought out from them. And now when we don't have boots on the ground to a degree, that's being eliminated.
Oh yeah, I mean I think that connection with the community is dying. But arguably, I hear older people, they complain a lot about the newspaper itself. They will say
the actual
news,
palpable pulp that one can
right.
Yeah.
And they say, look how thin it is, or it doesn't have the news, or the news is 3 days old. Like, check, and check. We get it.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that newspapers as a medium are as dead as a doornail. I mean, they just need to go away. Because they're no longer. I mean, they always were yesterday's news today, but that was acceptable at a certain time in history.
I'm going to challenge it. I don't think they need to go away. I think they just need to serve a different purpose. A long form read is a great example of that.
That could be too. But I mean, if you're depending on a newspaper to get your news now, you're going to always be a day or two behind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And my dad gets the Press and Sun Bulletin in Binghamton, and it's literally this many pages, and
with news
and
from
these are ads. And then this is the news. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
And with news from all over.
Yeah.
But I do think that news has evolved. So I think that Kent Gardner and company are doing a really, the Beacon.
Yeah.
I think that's admirable. So you're starting to see these types of news outlets, if you will, these news publications coming about. I think that blogs, I think Substack, I think that those are very interesting. I think podcasts are having a real moment that is, I think, going to continue to grow. And it is in some ways bringing local news, local stories, local color back into the community.
What I fear, though, from some of those mediums is that the people behind them, who's ever participating on them, whether it be a podcast or Substack or whatever, aren't adhering to the ethical pillars of journalism that professional journalists traditionally adhered to. So that's not to say that someone who is an expert in real estate, I'm staring at two of them, aren't giving unvarnished and speaking truth to the state of real estate in Rochester better than, say, a reporter,
go ahead.
But I would argue that in whatever case it is where the expert is speaking, they're speaking from their own point of view, and you've got data in front of you too, but you're speaking from your own point of view, and you're presenting it in such a way that not you, but one is presenting it in such a way that may reveal a bias, whereas a journalist tried to attempt to be that arm's length and remove themselves from the story.
I'm so grateful for high school civics classes that are educating. But they're educating their students about the need to actually look at a news story, figure out who the source is, and what are the sources, what is being cited. So you weighed in 2 weeks ago, thereabouts, on social media. There were these stories going around, just incendiary stories about ICE suddenly like grabbing families from their homes and deporting them. I'm like, okay, is this real? I had the audacity of
asking. When you went full right wing, right?
I had the audacity, and obviously, I'm genuinely concerned, but I'm like, okay, can you cite a source of some sort? Because none of the local media outlets are reporting this. There are no elected officials reporting it. There are no, in this day and age, when there are no photos and no video, can somebody just, because I want to
Mark, how dare you question and want facts?
And none of this is to suggest that it's not happening.
Yeah, right.
It may be happening, but you just want the source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Yeah.
Well, the comments were, it's happening. It's happening. And I'm like, that's still not a source. What is your source? I can't reveal that right now.
Of course.
I can just tell you that it's happening because I heard it from my neighbor's uncle's son.
What was the bar, J.R. Quigley's?
And that's what was playing out.
So what's going on here?
So we need to, social media is clearly not a great source of.
But there can be people there who are in the know and who are telling the truth, but
I think the problem
is present it in that way.
The problem is this too: is that the one consuming it needs to take some responsibility, as you're mentioning.
100%,
and that takes work. And let's be honest.
Well,
that's not going to happen.
It hasn't.
For many.
It hasn't happened for quite a while to come. I mean, this is where people don't have the time. B, they'd rather just knee-jerk the response. And C, and sadly and unfortunately, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, people just genuinely a lot of people don't have the intelligence to actually figure out what is and is not truthful, what is and is not accurate, what is and is not actually being cited by a relevant source.
I had a friend of mine who was asking me why the media in Western New York wasn't picking up on this story that he had seen in something called the Buffalo Chronicle.
Oh, Buffalo Chronicle, sure.
Right. Now, this is before it was sort of outed as the fake news website that it is, run by, I believe, like some sort of conservative or Republican operative in Western New York. So this is going back a few years, but I remember being struck at this person's insistence when I went to the website, because I had never heard of the Buffalo Chronicle at that time, and I'm open to new news sites, and sometimes there are boots on the ground bloggers or boots on the ground upstart news organizations that get the scoop on the traditional legacy media. So I'm like, what is this thing? Immediately, red flags all over the place. No byline. No caption on the photo, no date on the story, no contact or about us page. Like how, it had none of these things. Misspellings throughout the story. But what scared me then was this friend of mine who I think of as otherwise intelligent, didn't recognize any of those red flags. Ugh. It looked like a news story, in that it was on a website that had kind of an official sounding name with an official looking masthead. It had a picture, it had text, it had an ad for a pizza shop or something, and suddenly it's a legitimate news outlet in his mind.
Yeah. It was the equivalent of QAnon. Right. I mean, it really is. It's an online version of all this nonsense playing out in regard to QAnon.
Well, it's what's playing out on Twitter, too. For $8, you can buy your verified status, and then you can break news, and people see breaking news. That must be true.
Right? Yeah. I used to have the blue check mark.
Me too.
They took it away from me.
I refuse to pay for it. I'm not going to do it.
No way. That thing's a cesspool.
It is a Nazi porn hub. It is just. I deleted my account finally a few weeks ago. Yeah, I just can't do it any longer. And which is too bad, because as much as I don't like the site, the platform, I really did want to know what people in real time were thinking about Kendrick Lamar last night. Yeah. And so I go over to open it up. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
the one time. Can't do it.
Yeah, go back to MySpace.
I feel like we could have Dave on for like 9 more episodes, to be honest.
Hey, anytime.
Well, I was thinking the exact same thing. We need.
I don't know where we are. There's no clock. I don't know where we are in that.
Yeah, I think it's 4:35. Yeah, something like that.
It's next Tuesday.
But I do want to get on, because I do want to talk next time more about some of these great letters, but also some of more, like, perhaps where it is that we think that media is headed, and how is news going to be consumed in the future, and how is it going to be verifiable, and those are really, really interesting. So I promise that we're going to have you back sometime in the next few months, and we'll just continue this conversation, because it's just fascinating.
I'd love it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Doing any Rochester stuff? I don't have a lot.
Or do you want to cut? Bud. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Well, you want to talk about Butterjoy?
I don't know anything about Butterjoy other than the fact that so Butterjoy is a new bakery owned by a young woman. I'm very excited for anybody who's entrepreneurial and upstart. It's a Viennese bakery that just opened next to the Cinema Theater on Clinton. And so I'm probably going to send Sandra from our office sometime in the next few days just to buy, I don't know, $50 worth of baked goods.
There we go. So homework for you. We'll get the recap on how that is.
Okay.
And then we're also, what was the other thing we wanted you to do? Bonnie and Clyde. You got to tell us what you thought.
Well, that's going to be a couple weeks down the road. Oh, actually, you're actually going on vacation. You're going.
Yeah, I'm going to go to South Dakota. It's very cold there. You guys don't.
Why are you going to vacation in South?
I'm not. But when I say where I'm really going, everyone says how much they hate me, and I'm being dragged there. I don't really want to go, but
Yeah. He's going to Turks and Caicos. It's an annual family
Boo
trip.
Hoo.
Yeah.
This is why we don't want to bring it up.
I'll talk to you more about it offline. It's hedonistic. Yeah. So
it's a family vacation. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Very excited for it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be still jealous of you guys here and this.
Hey, I'm going on vacation with my family too this
there we
Friday,
go.
to Dominican Republic.
Yes.
So first time with kids at like one of these all-inclusive resorts.
It's gonna be great.
And stuff. We'll see how
It's
it
gonna be absolutely
goes.
great. Where are you gonna be, Mark?
I just came back from vacation. As I've said, I don't take another vacation until August. I take almost no time off because this is
It's
just
supposed to be busy.
It's supposed to be busy, yeah. So, and it will be. There are all sorts of other things we can talk about next week.
Yeah.
When do you return? What day?
Back next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. Okay, so we'll record
Next Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, next Thursday, and and there will be plenty to talk about.
Fantastic. All right. Do we have a guest lined up for next time?
Yeah.
Mark will tell us all about it next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See ya.